All right, and we're live. So, hello everyone, and welcome to our October movie club. Um, this month we watched Halloween because I really wanted to do a horror movie, and it felt correct to start a horror movie with, the start of the golden age of slashers. So I am joined today by my cohort Beckett, and is that a ghost? I thought it was Ryan, but it's hard to. Yeah, there he is. There he is.
It was me.
Before we get started on the discussion, I do want to do a little bit of housekeeping. So this here is our movie club. It is one of 3 multimedia clubs that we have at the Dragonfly Arts Collective. I put our Facebook group in the banner across the screen. So we have 2 monthly clubs. We have our movie club, which you are currently watching. We also have a monthly listening club, which we actually had the discussion for last night. It's still up. You can still watch it. We listened to the Goat Rodeo Sessions, which is a really, really fun collaborative album. It's kind of a mix of bluegrass and classical, and you can listen to us discuss whether it's one or the other or where it falls. But it's a collaborative album with Chris Thiele, Stuart Duncan, Edgar Meyer, and Yo-Yo Ma. We also
on that note, you
Yeah.
can also watch all of our past discussions on YouTube and Facebook.
Yes. We also have a quarterly book club. We meet every 3 months, and October is the end of one of our 3 months. So Beckett and I will be back here on Sunday at 2 p.m. to discuss Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. For those of you that are in our Facebook group, we do quarterly book clubs a little bit differently. I have quarterly themes. So Kindred was our pick for our fiction book that was published before the year 2000. But our next quarterly book club is going to be self-help or something about the creative process. And I have 3 options for us, and I'm going to be putting up a poll for it pretty soon. I thought I was going to do it earlier today, but I didn't. So you can decide from those 3 choices what we're going to read over the next few months, and then we'll meet again at the end of January to talk about everything we learned from those books. Like Beckett said, you can find all of our past meetings for Movie Club, Listening Club, Book Club in the Facebook group or on YouTube. If you do respond to them in the Facebook group, I get a notification about it. If you respond on YouTube, I will do my best to look at them, but it might take me a little bit longer.
I do get those notifications, so I can let everyone know if anyone is commenting on YouTube.
Perfect. You might be asking, why would we want to talk about commenting after the fact? Even though we are a small panel, we do only allow a certain number of people on these calls just to keep everything easy going and not everybody talking over each other. But you can participate live. If you respond, we actually get those notifications live. We can put it up on the air. You can be a part of the discussion. And if you're watching it on the replay, like I said, I get notifications for the Facebook. Beckett gets notifications for both of them. I started these clubs because I really like talking about media. And so, yeah, let me know your thoughts on any of our past picks or this pick or anything that you'd like to see us discuss in the future. I really like talking about it. So,
and we would love to see what you have to say about the media that we've discussed in the past. So don't think that it's ever too late.
Yeah, the discussions are actually very, very interesting. On that note, we can start this discussion, which we are talking about.
One more thing.
Yeah.
Don't forget, we have a Patreon. If you would like to support us, if you like what we do here, then subscribe to our Patreon. You can pay as little as $2 to support the projects that we put on here and our efforts. And one day there will be bonuses on there for subscribers. I just haven't figured out what those are yet. So
yeah, I need to figure out like a good plug for that in my little talk. I've been doing these for so long now. This is like a year. So like I have like my housekeeping
wow, has it been a
notes.
year already?
Yeah, because the very
Jeez.
first movie we did was Silence of the Lambs, which we picked because it was October.
Wow, yeah, wow.
So
Time flies.
happy anniversary to our
Yay.
multimedia clubs.
And happy Halloween.
And happy Halloween. So this month we watched the classic horror movie Halloween, released in 1978. It's considered the start of the golden age of slasher films. It is not the first slasher film. It's actually very much based on like old Italian horror movies. So
I think there's also a little bit of Psycho in there, like just building tension through the whole movie.
Ryan and I were actually talking because there's like the whole thing about final girls, and is Jamie Lee Curtis like the first final girl? And most people consider Psycho to be the first movie that has a final girl in it based on the criteria. But technically, Black Christmas is the first slasher with a final girl.
I haven't seen.
And was a huge influence for Halloween.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of slashers, so I had to do a lot of like looking up the history of this. But despite the fact that I'm not a huge fan of slashers, and I'm going to be relying on Beckett because Beckett does like slashers, I do have a lot of respect for John Carpenter, who wrote, directed, and composed the music for Halloween.
Really?
Yeah. He did that for a lot of his films. I've always had like a lot of respect for John Carpenter because he has an idea and he's like, I'm going to do all of it. And a lot of them are like cult classics. They're all like technically well done. And the music is iconic, unlike a lot of his movies.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the Halloween theme lives on. Like everyone who knows horror knows this song.
Yes. It's up there. There's a few of them. There's The Exorcist, has like an incredibly good soundtrack. Suspiria also is like just fantastic themes. A fun fact is I actually own the soundtrack to It Follows, which is much more recent. I have it on vinyl. Like I have a special edition of it on vinyl because I like the soundtrack to it. I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking, because it's been a very long time since I've seen this movie. Like Rebecca mentioned, I love slasher, and I love horror movies in general, like all types of horror movies, but I have seen a lot of slasher movies. Not enough, I'm discovering. But I was thinking while watching this again, because it's been a very long time since the last time I saw it, that how interesting the sound design is. Like, it's just not what you get in, the modern age of slasher films at all.
I would agree with that. So
yeah.
I have a background in specifically sound design and synth music, and sound design is something that, like, especially when it's like slashers or even in like the larger, I really, really hate body horror, but I am so used to like the exact fruits that you need and the exact placement of the microphone to get the right sound of like squishing and bones breaking. And surprisingly, I noticed very little of it.
Yeah, that, and also just some of the choices for like where to put the tense music. I was like, okay. Interesting.
Yeah. Some interesting off-screen dialogue as well. Written in 10 days.
Yeah, written in 10 days. I made the joke while watching it. So I usually say at the start of these, if you haven't seen the movie Halloween, there's going to be spoilers. You're going to hear our opinions. If you're not afraid of that.
How do you spoil this movie?
I feel like the poster spoils it. Like,
they make 7 more of these movies. Guess what? He doesn't die at the end. Who saw it before? I've seen Halloween years ago, probably before I properly appreciated movies the way I do now. But who's seen it before? Rebecca?
So I feel like I've seen it before in bits and pieces, as in I don't think I've ever put it on and like sat down and watched it, but it's been in the background for like things.
Like, yeah, I've definitely seen. I haven't seen some of the later Halloweens, but I've seen the first 3. I don't remember them very well. Like I said, it was a very long time ago that I watched these movies.
H2O, 20 years later.
Yeah, I don't remember if I saw that one or not.
I definitely haven't seen any others.
Halloween Kills.
Yeah. So
this is the only one John Carpenter did, though, right? I don't think he came back for any of the other ones.
I don't think he did either. No, he did.
Yeah, I thought he did at least the first 2, right?
He did Halloween, and then he did the 2018 Halloween as the composer and executive producer.
Right. I don't think he did.
He didn't direct it, though.
No.
He didn't direct any of the Halloween. Although he's apparently unaccredited for Halloween 2. Yeah. So he was there, I guess.
But he also
maybe he was a consultant.
Yeah. And then sorry. Sorry, I don't mean to keep cutting you off.
He just came back for the music and is listed as a producer on them. That's the end of what I was saying.
Yeah, I think specifically the moment when it stuck out the most to me with the tense music overlaid onto like a scene that was like not tense was the first time we meet Jamie Lee Curtis's character, and then she's just walking across the street, and it's like ba-da-da, and it's like okay.
I made the joke to Ryan that I want to do an analysis of this film to find out what percentage of it are just long poles of people walking. So a fun fact about this movie is that for it they got a very new technology that was essentially
Panaglide.
Yeah, Panaglide. I was about to say Panoscope, and I was like, that's not right. Which is fairly similar to a Steadicam. I imagine it's like for those of you that don't know, Steadicams invented for Rocky, as Ryan reminded me. It's like this giant suit that you put on, and it's how they get like smooth camera motions as people are moving.
Yeah, it has counterweights so that the camera doesn't shake.
Yeah.
If you've seen the movie Aliens, it's what they put the Gatling gun on for. Who has that one? Vasquez. They have a Gatling gun. They just put it on a Steadicam arm.
Oh, really?
Futuristic weaponry.
I've had a Steadicam rig on once, and it was terrible. And I'm very impressed with anybody who operates them. They're very heavy.
Operate one. Yes, they look like miserable.
They really help your posture. You have to sit up straight. Yeah. It's more legs than you think.
No, I would think it's all legs. I was going to say, like, I would think that you would build up so much leg muscle just from like walking around with that thing on.
It's a lot like backpacking gear. Like you have to like have it like hooked in the right way so that your weight distribution is right. Anyways, awful to wear, looks amazing, but it was fairly. The Steadicam wasn't actually out for this movie. I think that it was a few years before, but this was an early technology that similar, and I think they just got very excited about it and were like, we have to use it. But there was a lot of walking.
Let's see. Rocky was
And I was very
78, or-
confused about the neighborhood layout because they sometimes go to pick people up by cars, but everybody is within walking distance, which is fine.
Yeah, that was funny too. Because it was like, wait a second, I thought you lived right next door. Why do you have to drive there?
I also like I didn't say it when I was watching it, but I was just like, Paul is the laziest boyfriend I have ever. His parents are out of town, or his parents leave, so he calls his girlfriend to come pick him up to take him to her house, despite the fact that everybody lives within walking distance. And then she doesn't show up because, spoiler alert, she gets killed, and he never even calls back. He just like, that was it.
I mean,
And
the
I think
voice
it was
of
John
Paul
Carpenter.
was John
He's got
Carpenter. Yeah.
better things to do, I guess.
Do we want to give a quick synopsis of the movie for those who don't want to see it and are curious what we're talking about?
Would you like to do that?
Sure. Okay, so there's 3 storylines kind of roughly happening where was it 15 years ago there was a murder in a house where a brother killed his sister, and then we jump forward 15 years and he has escaped the mental facility, I guess.
I think it's like a maximum security prison, because at some point in the car, Loomis asks the nurse if she's ever done something like this, and she says minimal security only.
Oh.
Okay.
So I think it's a like maximum security.
I'm trying to remember what's on the side of the station wagon he's driving. It's like Chicago Institute or something like that. Anyway, so we are introduced to Nancy, a bookish, no social life babysitter for hire.
Yeah, Lori,
who has
Yeah,
nothing.
it's like
better to
Nancy.
do.
Who's Nancy?
Sorry. Who is Nancy? Anyways, who has nothing better to do on Halloween than babysit. What's the kid's name?
The neighbor kid.
The neighbor kid, which is, I think, technically the 3rd storyline of he's going to get beaten, or he's told by his bullies that the boogeyman's after him and that the boogeyman's going to come for him tonight. Again, I say storylines, they're pretty vague, and it's really just a reason to get a serial killer stalking the 3 female protagonists. Anyway,
I imagine, does he come back in future movies? Like, is he the protagonist in future movies?
He has
the kid, probably.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember.
You would, yeah. But yeah, so that's the general plot line, right? Is they're being stalked by a serial killer in a white mask that whose motives are vague. And
yeah, I was very struck this time around at how just loose the story of Michael Myers is. Like, he apparently killed his sister for no reason when he was 6, and then he got locked up for the rest of his life, and then was about to be going on parole, but the doctor who was treating him for his psychosis wanted to make sure he never got out. But like, this is a 6-year-old kid. And he's calling him, the purest form of evil, like the devil incarnate. And it's like, this was a child that you locked up. Like, okay, yeah, he brutally murdered his sister, but hey, can we maybe, treat him like he was a kid when this happened? Like, I don't get it.
He said he spent the first 8 years trying to like reach him, and then when he realized there was nothing but evil,
I didn't see any of that, so I don't know.
We have to take
this
his word
doctor's
for it.
calling evil.
It's very loose. Also, how did everybody get out of the maximum security? Like, there's like a very strange comment of like, when they rolled up, the nurse goes, "Wait, so they just let them roam outside now?" And I was like, "Are they cattle?"
No, I think there was a prison break, And specifically, Michael Myers was trying to get out, and that's why he caused it. And then that was more of like an offhanded, flippant comment from her about like because everybody was out because he wanted a distraction to escape or something. I don't know. It's
just
not
like
clear.
it's a very weird comment to make. Like, oh wow, they're just letting them roam around in the fields now. Like,
yeah, maybe not.
but I also think that's pretty fair for a lot of movies. Like a lot of the early horror movies of this time frame, like they're very loose on motives.
It's true. Again, I mean, again, I think a lot of it written in 10 days, shoestring budget, right? They're trying to, I think they're trying to more or less show what this new Steadicam Pano, I wonder if that even exists anymore, prove the technology and yeah, just kind of like threw it. How long was filming time for this? I don't know.
Yeah, I doubt there was time enough for more than one draft.
I don't have it listed on there. Yeah, very, very loose. I'm not exactly, because like usually when I watch movies, I find that like usually there's a central theme. Like something they're trying to, I don't know what it is. It feels
this one
like
is sluts deserve to die.
That is fair.
More or less, right? Well, that was, Rebecca, you had the theory that, and again, there's very little to go on, but it was that the brother was sexually attracted to his sister, and when she slept with her boyfriend
in 2 minutes.
In 2 minutes, hey, you know what? Hey, all right. I'm not gonna.
I thought it was hilarious because he was like, "Let's go upstairs," and then the camera's like moving around because Michael's coming in the house, and then as Michael is coming up the stairs, okay, bye, I gotta go.
Yeah, I said the exact same thing. I was like, "Wait, is he already?" And Ryan just goes, "It's a teenage boy."
Like, yeah, I mean,
already.
Yeah, all right.
Wham bam, thank you, ma'am.
That's 100%. Anyway, and it's as good of a reason that we have for anybody. Because then Michael stole the headstone off of his sister's grave and then made that diorama later on.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Which again is the only he has so little characterization, right? Like there's not like a lot of motive to go on for him.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably a fair assessment that he was in love with his sister in more than a sisterly way and got jealous, and that's why he did what he did. But he was 6. Again, he was 6.
He was 6. You're 100%. But then also, it feels like if that is the case, it was a bit of a wasted opportunity to have a whole psychologist there analyzing him for 15 years and couldn't
we
come
didn't
up
get
with
to
a
see
reason.
any of that.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So in briefly looking through this, it seems like 2 things kind of happened here. The first is that John Carpenter originally wanted to do a sequel to Black Christmas, which, as I said before, is considered a slasher film before these, which feels weird to say because Texas Chainsaw Massacre also happened in like 1974. So it was 4 years before this. Right. Interestingly, the same year as Black Christmas. Carpenter kind of showed interest in having his own sequel to Black Christmas. And though that's a movie that I know absolutely nothing about, it apparently does have an unseen and completely motiveless killer.
Oh, I think we lost Rebecca's video.
Oh no.
Okay, we're good.
Okay.
No, but you're good. I can still see you and hear you. Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so it features an unseen and motiveless killer, so that might be why there's not a lot of motive like in this.
Well, I think just because I want to is motive enough. I mean, a lot of serial killers operate on that motive. So I find it hard to believe that a 6-year-old kid again is beyond any kind of reach at all.
To do a spoiler for a different movie, have you ever seen Butterfly Effect?
Yes.
One of the spoiler for butterfly effect. I should have like a spoiler thing so like people scrubbing through don't get that. I always thought it was weird because one of the timelines that he has is he doesn't have a box of pictures because he blew up somebody with dynamite, but he was also 6 years old and has been kept in like a psychiatric hospital since then, and so he never took the photos, so he can't go back to them.
Yeah, I
But
don't
I remember having that
movie very
same thing
well,
of being like, no, I'm pretty sure like if you do something horrendous as a juvenile, a lot of times you get out at
You-
like 18. Like,
well, and also I feel like you're not too far gone at 6 years old. You're not too far. Like there's
He-
something. I don't,
Listen,
he's
he
not
was
the
pure
spawn of Satan.
evil.
but
We have to go by what the movie tells us, and the psychiatrist said he is pure evil. He also murdered a bunch of people.
That is actually like one of the other things of Carpenter didn't really want to write a thing about like Halloween or Michael Myers as a thing. He wanted it to be a haunted house.
Interesting.
That was like his inspiration for it. And they also said that they took a lot of inspiration from Samhain, which is Halloween pagan tradition, Celtic pagan tradition, where Halloween is the night where souls are let out to wreak havoc on the living. And so it's supposed to be like a haunted house and just like a spirit just being like, time to have some fun.
Is that why they survived? Because they made a jack-o'-lantern?
I did have a question about it, about like the jack-o'-lantern. Very possible. So it kind of just seems like he wanted to write a different story and it kind of just kept getting pushed back into this.
Yeah, it's a funny movie. If you're not a fan of horror, I was raised in a far different time than when this came out, when like slashers were kind of a new thing. So I don't consider this a horror movie. It's not scary. But that's just me.
I think there's like one jump scare in the entire thing. Like it's definitely not. It's before that kind of time. I don't know if other people would agree with that statement. I think that
fair. I mean, I will, big caveat, it takes a lot to get to me when it comes to horror and gore. So
well, we had
take that with a grain of salt.
What is horror versus slasher? What's the distinction, right? Like, is it a single murderer?
Horror is an all-encompassing genre of just films that are meant to be scary. Slashers specifically, usually it's one killer, and usually involves teenagers and probably naked teenage girls getting, chopped up for the audacity of having premarital sex, and a lot of blood. Slashers usually, they get slashed and there's blood. So
okay. Well, I mean, I'm remembering there was a thing. It was so terror is the anticipation of violence. Horror is the realization afterwards, right? So horror, like if you're being chased by a murderer, that's terror. If you come across a dead body, that's horror. So is Halloween more terror because she's being chased?
Well, we don't classify any movies as terror films.
But maybe we should. I'm just saying. The language.
Yeah, we learned that recently.
I also found it the reveal of like the haunted house quality when she finds all of her dead friends was hilarious to me. Only because like, why did he hang him from the ceiling, and why did he stuff the other girl in the cupboard? Like it doesn't make any sense.
With the crossed eyes.
Again, I was going to ask, is that John Carpenter's like direction of just like probably. Dead people have crossed eyes?
Again, now that you say that it was supposed to be a movie about a haunted house, it makes me think of if you made a haunted house theme movie, that's what it would be, is ridiculous, like walking in on weird scenes, like a girl dead on a bed with a headstone for some reason.
Yeah.
And so that
Also,
actually makes a lot more sense.
I thought that her gosh, I'm blanking on the main girl, Laurie's reaction when she finds Annie dead on the bed. I'm like, wouldn't you go over and check? She doesn't look dead to begin, like, just because she's not moving and she has a headstone, like I would run over and check and say, are you okay? Like, wake up. But like, she doesn't look dead. She doesn't have any like blood or anything on her. But she just
Right.
walks in and screams, and I'm like,
But how
do you
many
know
times
she's
does she
dead?
also turn her back to Michael and assume he's done? It happens like 4 times in the movie of just like,
Can't kill the
well, now that
boogeyman.
that's over, I don't need this knife anymore. It's like, he's already gotten up twice.
You can't kill the boogeyman.
Just double tap.
I mean, I remember distinctly just going, why would you go back to the house with the kids in it?
If you're being chased by a murderer, you mean?
If you're being chased by a murderer. She made a lot of very strange decisions.
Because nobody else would let her in.
Right. On Halloween night, it's a prank.
Yeah, it's just a Halloween prank.
I guess the reason why they didn't want to put, because Ryan also questioned it as we were watching. Like, the psychiatrist didn't want to put a picture of Michael Myers on TV because then everybody would dress up like Michael Myers and you'd see him on every corner. But they didn't know I guess they knew what mask he stole. I don't know. You never fully see his face.
You do well, and I forgot that there is a face reveal in this one.
Kind of. You never
briefly,
really see it.
You see his eye because
it's like he pulls the mask off at the end, and you do see his face. It's very brief, but you do see his full face. And I, for whatever reason, I was always thinking that they never, like him and Jason, like they're very much known for their masks. So I didn't remember that part. So I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Speaking of the mask.
The mask was it a Richard Nixon mask or something?
Close.
No, it was Captain Kirk.
Captain Kirk, that's right. And they stretched it and painted it white. Yeah.
Yep.
Cut out the eye holes a little bit more. Yeah, and interestingly enough, Jason didn't get his mask until the third one, right? In 1982. So they were, it's like almost 10 years between you had good horror masks.
Well, Jason wasn't the murderer in the first one. Spoilers. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Spoiler alert.
But he wore a sack on his head in the second one. And it wasn't until the third movie that he found a hockey mask.
He got the hockey mask, yeah.
Yeah. Very low kills for a slasher flick, right? Technically, what, 4? 5? Sister, truck driver, friend number 1.
Yeah, Annie.
Friend number 2, and the boy.
And the
boyfriend.
5.
And Bob.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty low kill count for a slasher movie.
A lot of the older ones do have very low kill counts.
Yeah.
Right.
I think 5 is usually actually like one of the standards. Not to continue to talk about other movies and spoil but like Cabin in the Woods. That is the entire like joke of that movie, is like the stereotype
Right.
of slasher movies where you have, the slut, the jock, the
Nerd.
goofball, I guess.
Yeah, stoner.
The stoner is how the smart one, like the nerd,
right?
And then the virgin,
who's the one who lives,
who's always the one who lives. And so in this, like, you don't really have a smart one.
Well, I mean, I think Jamie Lee Curtis was supposed to be the smart one.
Yeah.
Jamie Lee
and
Curtis
she-
is the virgin.
Do you remember how many books
But
she
she's
had?
also the smart one. She
And
was
her
saying that
cheerleader, her cheerleader
guys-
friend, had
guys-
no need for books.
yeah, she said that guys don't like her because they think she's too smart.
It's true. I mean,
And she had an
those-
answer when she was called upon in class. That means
she did.
she's
I don't
smart.
even.
Yeah, honestly, like that question also just like went.
Right.
And she was like staring outside the window, and it wasn't like a fact question. It was like a analysis question. I was like, damn.
Yeah.
Right, and it was something about fate or destiny versus something
Yeah,
else.
it
And I
was-
feel
Yeah,
Fate according to different authors.
right, and I feel like it was somehow tied to the storyline, but I couldn't quite piece it together. Like,
I'm trying to like remember what they were. I think one was waiting for Godot, and the other one.
Yeah, the contrast was according to one of the authors, fate is immutable, and according to the other one, it was
It's like a god.
Wait.
something
You're right. It's something
like
some
one of
comparison
the
about a mountain.
one of-
Something you can
one of-
appeal to.
right. One of the analyses, it was more flexible.
So how does that tie into Michael Myers? Was she destined to get in that situation because history repeats itself? I don't. Again, like I said, I would have liked a little bit more.
Why did
story
It does-
there, but-
so he picked Lori because she dropped off the key at the house,
right.
Yeah.
and then followed her, and then switched to Annie for some reason.
Yeah.
The car scene did make me laugh.
Her going to the car, forgetting the keys, going all the way back.
Keys, and then like coming back, and then just not
And it's
questioning it at
unlocked.
all that
Yeah.
it's unlocked.
Well, she gets in the car, starts and like, wait a minute, and then it's all
Yeah.
foggy. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he just wanted to kill a young girl, and originally his plan was to go after Lori, but Annie was there, so it
Right.
was easier.
But he still
Also-
wanted to kill her also. So
A slut's got to die.
right. Right. Yeah. But yeah, generally it was a pretty kind of like slow pace, not a lot of story. Visually great. Some of the dialogue was bad.
No.
Just- Yeah.
It's really so. The entire script was written by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, and Deborah Hill demanded to write all of the dialogue between the women talking to each other.
But it feels like on set the note was, okay, we don't have dialogue written, just say something about books while we bring a camera through.
Right.
And she's just like, well, I don't have my chemistry book, I don't have my English book, and French? I don't even know if I take French. And then I need this book. It's like, okay. Very weird.
Yeah, but it is like interesting to think about because like with these horror movies especially where it's just like gotta kill all the slutty girls, like the conversations that the girls have with each other, and this one actually like passes the Bechdel test.
It does.
Like their
absolutely does.
dialogue feels a little bit more like girls talking to each other than in a lot of other like especially slasher movies I've seen.
Slightly. It's funny because
It's
they
not
do
good
talk
dialogue.
No, but they do talk about boys. So there are scenes of dialogue that don't pass
Right.
the Bechdel test. But it felt very much like, oh, we got to add in some current teen slang because I
Yes.
don't remember her name. The blonde, she kept saying totally and like overemphasizing it every time. And it's like, that's not how you interject that into a sentence. Like,
Well,
It is when you're a teenager.
yeah, I mean, what do you know?
Although they're a little bit older.
Yeah, I don't know. I see.
But to
So-
go back to the actual like I will fully admit I am not the person to talk about slasher movies. It is something that I am not a fan of. I don't know the history of, and I kind of enjoy them in like a weird like comedy aspect, but only occasionally. Ryan showed me the entirety of Chucky lore,
The Chucky lore gets crazy. Oh,
and like I have a friend who's very very into Chucky, and I'm just like I don't have time for this. I do not care. Um, but I will give this movie. It had some really good camera work.
hmm
Besides just following people walking, you feel like, especially at the start of it, like you are somehow an accomplice to Michael Myers. Like it's not POV other than the very opening sequence,
hmm
which I really liked. He's like looking through the window and then he starts to go one way and then decides to go back so that you really notice that it's a POV,
Mm.
but then like walks back around and then you see his hand. But after that, once he's like in the car, he's like driving by the school, but the camera's in the back seat. So it's like you're being driven by like Michael Myers, and there's like a few scenes where he's like watching Laurie and the camera is just like beside him and a little bit shaky. Like it
Yeah.
shoots it like you are a person standing next to Michael Myers. You are just as creepy as he is.
Yeah. The perspective in this is very voyeuristic for
Yes.
much of the film.
A lot of horror movies have that. Suspiria is fascinating just for that alone. But
I mean, it's one of those film languages of like we automatically associate if you do have camera handheld, it has that feel of we're watching. We instinctively know that's POV versus having really nice dolly shots, which this movie also had. So
also
mix.
It gives the viewer a perspective that the protagonists don't have, because you can see what the killer is doing for most of the movie. Like, I don't think there's a lot of time that we get away from Michael in one way or another throughout the movie after he's introduced as an adult. So there's a little bit, but a lot of the time he's included in some way. And
right.
it makes the viewer feel like they have inside knowledge. And I think that helps to build the tension, because you know what's coming, but the person you're watching doesn't.
Right.
So although you're watching things from the perspective of maybe like an accomplice of his, or even from Michael's perspective in the third person, you associate yourself with the victim, because, humans are naturally empathic, and you're supposed to. That's how the film is shot. And so having that kind of removed view of the protagonist is effective in like evoking that kind of fear, because you're like, oh shit, something's gonna happen and she doesn't know, run away.
Right. Yeah. That's the tension building, right?
Mm-hmm.
Although I was going to say there's one scene, Rebecca picked it up, or she's looking out the window. He's standing by a clothesline. She doesn't look away. The camera does, but then it comes back and he's gone. It's like, what did she see?
Yeah, because that breaks the illusion.
The edit, right. If something fell behind her and she turned and then came back and he's gone, or like when he was behind a bush and they were walking along the street, like. He ducks out and then he goes back and they walk around and he's gone. It's like, okay.
Yeah, that was a funny edit.
Is Michael Myers magical? Do you think? Is he supernatural?
Well, you can't kill him, so maybe.
But is he just a guy is he just pure evil? Because like Jason is supernatural, right? Especially by the end, he literally can't kill him. He heals from everything.
Not in the first one. He's just a guy.
I think based on the connection to Samhain, I think yes, he is an evil entity.
He's an evil spirit.
An evil spirit that maybe just like kind of possesses
Maybe
Michael Myers every
Hmm.
Halloween. I don't know, but
right.
Maybe
Or
what they needed was an
empty.
exorcist.
He was empty for the first 7 years, and then, he was possessed, and that's what the doctor is picking up on.
But the doctor's not an exorcist.
right.
So after this, we had Halloween 2, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, Halloween 4, Return of Michael Myers, Halloween 5, Revenge of Michael Myers, Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, Halloween H2O, 20 years later, Halloween Resurrection, Halloween the Reboot by Rob Zombie, Halloween 2, the reboot by Rob Zombie, Halloween again in 2018, Halloween Kills, and Halloween Ends came out last year.
Mm-hmm. I haven't seen the Rob Zombie Halloween. I saw his Friday the 13th and I really liked it.
Danny
Check out his
McBride wrote the new
Halloween.
Halloween movies, by the way.
What?
Danny McBride is one of the lead writers on Halloween, Halloween Kills, and Halloween Ends.
Yes, I heard you. I
Okay.
stand by my statement. There was another really, really funny scene in this for me that I want to get your opinion on, Beckett, because it was more of a language thing. They only go into the Michael Myers house once, which I think is weird. Like, if he came back to that specific house, it feels weird that we don't spend any time in it. I feel like it would have been better if, like, nobody lets Laurie in, so she has to run into this haunted house. That would have been, like, a good closed circuit.
Also, can we talk about the skunk that killed a dog?
That is what I want to talk about. They go into the Michael Myers house and then say, "Is that a dog?" And then they say, "It's still warm. He got hungry." And then there's, like, a statement of says, "Maybe it was a skunk." And I was like, are you suggesting that the skunk mauled a dog?
No,
or are you suggesting that it's not a dog at all and that it is a skunk? Because you made it very unclear.
I'm 99% sure that the he they're referring to is Michael killed an animal to eat.
Yeah.
They couldn't tell what the animal was, and it could have been a dog, but they didn't want to think that it was a dog, so maybe it's a skunk.
Still a weird,
but I did
very weird throwaway line. I also like, who are these skunks that are mauling dogs? Tell me more.
I like that they didn't show the animal, especially because knowing that, like, I hate watching these old movies because the animal cruelty laws were not sufficient, and so there was a lot of horrible things done to animals for the sake of film back in the day. So anytime there's like something happening to an animal, I'm like, no. So I like that it wasn't shown because it could have been real in the 70s.
Yeah, I mean, there's the German Shepherd. I don't think they hurt the German Shepherd.
No,
I think they held the German Shepherd and then they slow motion when its legs, like.
Yeah, I think they were really conscious of not harming animals for this, which I was grateful for.
See,
I was a huge fan of Bob dying. Like, not his dying, but like his actual death of like stabbing him against the wall.
That was so funny.
I think that was my favorite death.
It was, I think, the best kill in them. I mean, it's so close to being a comedy. Like, if it weren't for the soundtrack, I swear you could have turned it. So when he's strangling her with the phone and it sounds like sex noise on, and like she's like, "Oh, whatever her face is, leave me,"
Yeah.
So I had to look it up. The could have been a skunk line is that they wanted it's the sheriff trying to make, like, in his mind that Michael Myers did not kill and eat a German Shepherd. They specify that it's a German Shepherd.
Right.
And the sheriff says it could have been a skunk, implying that a skunk could have killed the dog because he couldn't. Like, the fact that the psychologist is saying,
right,
oh, this is just pure evil. He would 100% do this if he got hungry. It's the sheriff rationalizing that, no, a person wouldn't do this. And he blames it on a skunk. Hilarious line. I had to look it up. There's multiple pages.
I don't know. That was definitely not my read of it.
So
It was
it
that they didn't want to think that he would kill a dog, so they justified, well, maybe it's a skunk.
maybe
But
Well,
it is
just the
based, no.
sheriff. The sheriff
Yeah.
doesn't believe that Michael
Yeah.
Myers exists or is evil.
Well, he
yeah,
exists.
but
He was going to
the
find
doctor
another reason.
the doctor definitely knew that it was him because he comments right after that. He says, "Well, no man would kill and eat a dog." Well, he's not a man.
He's
So.
not a man.
Yeah. I'm not the first person who had that question, and that's the explanation online, is that the sheriff can.
Interesting.
Apparently, we should have been watching the TV edit of this movie, because for Halloween, so when they were shooting Halloween 2, they went back and shot to fill the full 2-hour time slot for a TV broadcast. They went and reshot scenes with Donald Pleasant and Jamie Lee Curtis that include Dr. Loomis at a hearing view for young Michael, and
Oh.
confronting young Michael in his room, discovering that Michael has escaped and scrawled the word sister on the door, and a concerned Lori asking a friend, Linda, about the man she keeps seeing around the neighborhood, which that doesn't add much, but still.
Yeah, that sounds better. I mean,
See-
honestly, the fact that the script was written in 10 days, and I don't know how long the shooting on this took. I'm guessing not that long. Maybe
20
like
days.
There you go. Yeah, sure. That's even longer than I thought it would. But like, you know, it feels very slapdash, which it was. So he wasn't thinking about, oh, let's give more context to this. He was just like, yeah, great. Killer kid grows up, kills a bunch of people.
Right.
Boom. That's all you need. I don't even think we need the context of he killed his sister when he was a kid. Like, just, a motiveless killer roaming. Yeah. Well, I don't think it's even necessary. Like a motiveless killer just roaming the streets and killing anybody he comes across. I think that's scarier.
Well, you're missing the most important thing here. If they excluded that, then how would they include that woman's boobs in the movie?
That's true.
Yeah, well, fair point.
Former Playboy playmate.
Well, you gotta have her boobs of anybody.
It has the telltale signs of a very cheap horror movie, like just very little detail.
You made me remember the scene where she dies and she's fondling herself.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I don't think she was hired for her acting abilities, unfortunately.
I don't think that she was instructed to be scared.
Okay.
She was instructed to feel herself up and make it sound like she was having an orgasm.
Absolutely possible. Absolutely. But why do you think Michael Myers has survived? Not in the narrative of the movie. I mean, why? Like, he's iconic at this point, right? Like that mask, the sound, the music. Why do you think? I mean,
Because
Jason and Freddy also, but
it's considered the first slasher film. I mean, of the modern genre of slasher. So it's iconic in like the regard of how it followed and inspired so many other franchises. I mean, watching this movie makes me want to watch Scream again for sure.
Scream's great.
Scream is. I learned about Scream during we studied it in film school because it's the first postmodern horror. It is a horror movie in which we look back at other horror movies as a
referential horror movie that's halfway between an actual slasher and parody. It's great. And it's genius.
And it works really well. That said, I didn't see any of the new ones.
To answer your question, I actually think, and I think this applies to all of the slashers and a lot of horror movies in general, it's a cultural thing of like, this is a group that you belong to. When this came out, it was like around the time frame that like people were really going to like movie theaters a lot. I think it was like, a night out. This is catering to kids that are like upper teens, early 20s. And they're going to see something that's very edgy and includes boobs and talks about sex. And if you're in the know, then you're in the know. And I think that is more of what carries on, because like, I know all of these horror characters. I haven't seen a lot of them. It's not my jam. And so I think it's just one of those things of like, if you know this character, that means you're one of the cool people who watched this movie about
Right.
sexy teens dying.
And absolutely formative. Again, and it played into the, the actual serial killers of the 70s, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely, it did. Maybe a little bit
Yeah.
too close. It probably was a lot scarier then because of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just think of how, when you look back at the start of any genre, like when it bursts onto the scene, in a way that like shifts the culture in this way, it's gonna be a classic, whether it's a good movie or not. And that's true of most of these, films that kind of launched a whole movement after the fact. And now we have, a very vibrant and robust horror, scene going on. So
it's kind of like a more calm version of the Rocky Horror Picture Show crowd.
Maybe.
Slasher fans?
Kind of, yeah.
I mean, less theatrical for sure.
Less theatrical, but kind of still has the same vibe of like,
yeah, I've been to a lot of
the outfit. This is the knowledge that I have. I have seen this. These are my people.
It's a lot of nerds and people who have a hard time socializing otherwise. Like I've been to a lot of horror parties for like, various horror movies and just horror themed, just parties, Halloween parties and then some. And it's a lot of people who don't get out much. They just love the genre and they're very awkward to talk to, but you go to meet your community because we all love the same thing. And it doesn't matter that we're weird. That's horror fans.
That actually adds up. We've played this game with you before, Beckett. So there's a game show called Actually that you can find like some of the videos for online, and sometimes they do themed things. And one of the funniest things is when they do these kind of like themed shows. Yeah. People get very, very competitive about it. Like, I'm going to be the best one, except for the horror ones. When it's like a horror themed episode, they're like, we have to make sure everybody has the same number of points. All right, guys, we all know the answer to this. Let's all go and say it. Like, it is like the most friendly thing where they're just so excited to be talking about horror movies with other horror people. And like, there's no competition. It's just friends.
It is a really fun community. Like I belong to a few different fandoms, and definitely some of the horror themed like parties I've gone to have been some of my favorites because they go all out like for decorating and everything. So, it's like if you're going to a horror themed party, it's basically a haunted house and everyone's in costume and everyone's really nice and just excited about horror. So it's a lot of fun. And we are all weirdos, and that's cool.
Well,
as opposed to me.
Right.
No, but I do love how horror has become more mainstream over the last decade or so or longer. But like, because this used to, back in when this was released, it was a very niche fandom. But these days it's like, oh, you're not watching American Horror Story? Why? Why not?
I think more so than like any other genre, horror kind of has a habit of just running things into the ground, though.
Yes. Well,
like
I think
some of their things are like so innovative, and some of them are 7 Halloween movies in a row, or they came up with like Exorcist Believer that is literally just the first movie,
the first one, but with 2 girls.
Two girls this time.
And so it's like this weird thing of like, you also like have horror movies like Hereditary or Talk to Me and like these new things. And it feels like whenever you get really new ideas, a lot of times they're getting sold through horror because those are what you can make for a very cheap budget.
Mhm.
But like a lot of mainstream horror is just the same characters over and over and over again.
Yeah, it's the big budget, like, blockbuster problem. It's the same reason why we have, like, 27 Marvel movies, like, it's the name.
It's the formula. If you have a formula that works, they don't want to change it.
Well, and I would say it's even more just the name recognition. Like, everyone knows
Right.
Halloween. If there's
Right.
another Halloween movie, people are gonna go,
Yeah.
like,
Right. There's
guaranteed.
certain seat butts in seats. There's a certain
Yeah.
amount of fans going into it, and that's why.
Yeah.
Right now, like you said, any comic book movie, right? You're going to have
Mhm.
a certain amount.
Yeah, what I do love about horror as a film genre, though, is that there is a lot more room for experimentation versus the big budget blockbuster movies. Because people who make horror movies are not generally like the huge studios that have hundreds of millions of dollars to play with and will only put that money to a guaranteed hit. People
Right.
who make horror movies just love horror. And so a lot of times they are shot on a shoestring budget. They're not big smash releases. They're like, cult classics. So there's a lot more room for experimentation in the genre, I think.
And then at the same time, not only did we have The Exorcist Believer, I just wanted to bring it up because I wanted to know like what the most popular Halloween movies or like horror movies were this year. And there's a lot of like ones that are new series, but you also have, Evil Dead Rise, The Exorcist, you have Scream 6, Saw 10. And then I forgot about The Nun 2.
Yeah.
Which I have brought up multiple times because I watched The Nun when I was in high school, and the only thing I remember about it is at one point in time, the nun comes out of a toilet. That was apparently a core memory for me.
It's peak filmmaking. I mean, really.
But that was like 15 years ago, and so The Nun 2 coming out now is just like, why?
Why not?
What happened?
I mean, again, it's the same thing. You guaranteed butts in. You can look at a formula. You can say we spent this much on this in 2005. We have the rights to it. Might as well make a thing.
Right.
Yeah. So next October we have to watch a Jordan Peele movie.
Okay, down for it.
I'm down. I've actually wanted to do Get Out for a long while, and I thought about it for this one, and then I decided against it in the end and decided to go with something that's like a lot more I wanted to do something that was more slasher because we can do Get Out any month.
That's
Get
true.
Out isn't really a
But
Halloween film.
It's not a Halloween
but
film, but it is technically still a horror.
Yeah, and what I love about Jordan Peele's movies is they fit into this new wave of horror that's kind of springing up. That's like non-traditional sci-fi horror, which I love. Sci-fi horror is definitely my favorite kind of subgenre of the all-encompassing umbrella.
Oh boy.
So.
I mean, Event Horizon will always hold a special place in my heart, but boy, oh boy, those CG effects do not. Oh boy, they do not.
One of my favorite kind of sci-fi horror-esque films from like my high school, like of all time, actually, is Sphere. Sphere is very good.
Sphere. We were just talking about Sphere very recently. That one, yeah, I think you need to go back and rewatch it because I remember the twist, but like very little else about it.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen Record REC? Either the original or the remake?
No.
It's a really good horror flick.
But anyway, sorry.
No, go.
I was just saying, like this kind of new wave horror that we have going on that's kind of like genre bending and not along the traditional lines of like either slasher or ghosts or what we normally get from the golden age of slasher into the 90s and aughts of what we have in horror films, but like these kind of like different tense scenarios that give you a whole different feeling about what it means to be scared. I love it.
Like a genre of terror instead of horror. Hmm.
We are over an hour here, so I do want to get this a little bit wrapped up. If you have final thoughts.
I like Jason better. Jason's the better slasher.
My only final thought is when he pins him up against the wall with a knife, that would not happen. That's not.
Yeah, I also had that thought.
No, I mean, if you get like under the ribs and then like it was facing down,
no,
you probably would have
not
done.
even.
You
Not
spun
possible.
around, which would have been pretty funny, but
nope, especially not with a kitchen knife. But also,
yeah.
I did love the moment where he's just standing there staring at him, and he's like, "That was great."
I guess the final thoughts is: did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy the movie?
Always.
Rebecca, did you enjoy it?
I had fun.
Okay. Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I consider it like the peak of cinema.
No.
And I
people do.
definitely don't have the nostalgia for it that a lot of people do while putting this like really high up there. There's slasher movies that I like a lot more.
Yeah. Same. I mean, also, I am not of this generation. So, I have different tastes in my horror films. I do love the classics, but I wouldn't put them at the top of my list.
Yeah.
Did John Carpenter manifest his directing The Thing, the remake? Since he put it in this movie, was that him being like, "This is, put that out in the universe"?
Probably. That was him just being like, "I want this."
Yeah. Well, can I get the rights to? Let's do it.
Well, and his version was excellent.
Oh, it's so. I mean, again, maybe we should do that one because
it was on my short list and then I couldn't find it streaming anywhere.
I think I own it. I think on DVD. But anyways,
you gonna loan it to all of us so we can watch it?
I'm down. I mean, it's what sitting in an envelope. Somewhere?
No, I mean everybody in Dragonfly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
sure. Or let's start right now in a theater. All right, let's get everyone together and we'll watch it together.
That sounds like a good time.
How much is it to rent the Alamo Drafthouse?
Probably much higher than our budget.
See, that's where you put the Patreon plug in. Anyway.
All right. I guess I have to get started on watching all the rest of these Halloween movies. So
it's like 12 of them.
That's why I got to get started now. So thank you guys for joining me. And I hope you have a wonderful Halloween. And hopefully we'll see everybody here on Sunday when we're talking about Kindred.
Yes. Good night.
I have to wait for him to